Karen Suchsland, welcome to the Made Leader podcast. I'm really glad to have you on today.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
All right, so let me set the stage. We're on video today, which is unlike the podcast I usually do. So thank you for experimenting with me. We're also going to do our best not to edit. So don't screw up, all right?
All right, unfiltered. Here we go.
All right, so Karen, as a former leader who is really well known for building high performance teams, it seems like there is a problem with meeting culture in general. It is one of the things that I know middle managers complain about a lot. They're always in meetings and then they have to lead their own team meetings and they just seem painful. What have you experienced in your life when it comes to meeting culture, team meeting culture, etc.?
So I've seen the good and I've seen the ugly, where you're sitting in a meeting and just either looking at your phone, looking at off into space, wondering, all right, what groceries do I have to pick up on the way home? When is this going to be over? Why am I here? And I think based on statistics that I read, I am not alone in those thoughts. But I will say there is tremendous opportunity to make meetings valuable. And I would say for the most part, when I had my team meetings, I really looked forward to having them. And I think the folks on my team, probably not 100% of the time, I'm sure, but also found that they derived value out of them. And again, I'm not an expert, but I think you can learn from being in bad meetings.
Yes.
And figure out, what makes it so horrible for me to be sitting in a meeting. What are those key things that kind of took it off the rails, and how can I prevent that from happening in my own meetings? It doesn't always, but.
No, it doesn't. And not a lot of leaders are skilled facilitators. So and you get busy and then you're like, we're just going to get everyone together. So I think where a good place to start is, what are some reasons for gathering your team? Because I think some people just do it to do it. They get in the routine. They think they have to. But
I think the big thing is you have to be purposeful. And if you as a leader don't know why you're having a meeting and what is the outcome that you want to get out of that meeting, you need to take a beat and, hold off on scheduling that until you really give it kind of some thought. I mean, if you have a complex topic that you need to talk about, if you need to have some collaboration and really get differences of opinion in a back and forth, if you have changes to an org structure or to your team, you should definitely have a meeting to discuss that and not just send it out in an email, especially if that has direct impact to your team. Yeah. You can also use team building to build camaraderie and to, help facilitate your team becoming a team. And I think that's especially valuable in the beginning stages. If you enter into a new team, or you're leading a new team, or you introduce new people into your team. But I would also then put the footnote on that, is that you also then have to be conscious of, so you have a new team and you're meeting on a regular cadence, say weekly. Well, then you're 3 months in or so, and you feel like you understand what's going on with the team. The team is, feels like there's good communication. Then you need to take a step back and evaluate, do we really need to still meet weekly? And I think some people get stuck into we always meet weekly. So why would we, it's a bad thing to say, you know what, we're going to move to biweekly and see how that goes.
Yes.
And, here's different avenues. This doesn't mean if you have an issue, you have to hold it for the next, 2 weeks, but you have one-on-ones, and those should not replace a team. Team meeting should not be the place where a one-on-one happens.
No. Or my biggest pet peeve is status updates where everyone's going around and saying, here's what I'm doing. It's like the highlight. I mean, maybe if you're doing a quick huddle and you need to like, this is important for you to know, that's a different scenario. I get why you'd want to meet weekly for a new team or someone comes in, but good Lord, to meet weekly if you've already known each other for a while and everything is ebbing and flowing. I like that you said you can always adjust, maybe start out with the more frequent, and then moving back, but evaluating that. Yeah. And I had things similar. It was like, if you have work to do, right? So if you are brainstorming new ideas, if you're goal setting, if you're doing any of the work, you're planning, you're doing, that's really important. Like you said, any kind of change, any disruption, meet. And then, of course, culture and team building. So to me, those are the three main reasons.
I think a good thing to keep in the back of your head as if you are scheduling a meeting, time is a finite resource. So by pulling in a team to get together and have a meeting and say it's an hour and it's, 6 people, what am I preventing those 6 people from doing in the next hour? And is the meeting and the decisions that are going to, or the outcomes, hopefully, from that meeting, are those going to equate to higher value than what they could be doing? And that's what you have to keep in mind, because that's why people check out. Mm-hmm. They get in a meeting and they're like, well, this doesn't apply to me. I don't care about this. This really didn't need to be a meeting. Well, they could have been, getting contracts written or talking to their vendors or, developing
checking emails,
getting responses to key clients, right? Mm-hmm. Versus they're checked out and they're trying to do it in the meeting. And then that makes your meeting go, a lot of times it lengthens the meeting because people are kind of half in, half out. So I think you just really need to take a minute of what is the opportunity cost of the meeting. And it's both sides. I, as a leader, have goals that I want to accomplish, but also those people attending the meeting have goals. Like, hey, I want to get an answer on this, this, and this, or I need a better understanding of where we're going strategically, or I want to contribute to decision-making that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important to note the opportunity cost because it's there and think about how much it costs for your team to be at that meeting, right? Take their hourly rate, figure that out and go, okay, this is costing us X amount. Let's make it worth it. I think that's important for a leader just to take a pause and ask themselves that. All right. So thinking about what must you have in an effective meeting? Mm-hmm. Like what are some components of a good meeting for a leader to consider?
Yeah. So I think, first off, as I've stated, you really have to have in your head kind of what is the goal that I'm trying to accomplish? And then you need to communicate that goal as part of an agenda and making sure, do I have the right resources there? And adding resources to a meeting, your meeting isn't judged by how many people you can fit around the table. And sometimes it's better to scale back and say, let's start with a smaller group and meet and then come back. I think you need to be consistent, in particular as you're scheduling meetings with the team and the world is it's a global workforce today. And, not only globally, but within the States, people are operating in different time zones. You need to figure out a time that works best for everyone. And that even goes if you're a localized team, you have to understand what people on your team, what their obligations are, right? So if I have somebody on my team that is primarily responsible for dropping off their child at daycare every day and daycare doesn't open till 8:00, do I really want to schedule a meeting for 8:15 and they're, rolling in the door and frazzled because they either sat in traffic or they, haven't had even an opportunity to catch their breath and check their schedule. And we've all, on the other side of that, we've all been invited to those Friday at 3:00 meetings.
That is just evil. Like, why?
Yeah. I just, I'm like, and so many times, I understand if it's something that's really, really super critical, but most things, if you're waiting until Friday at 3:00, it's not going to get solved over the weekend.
Right. Let me counter that. All right. Because sometimes Fridays are kind of a little more loosey-goosey. People may be more apt to be in a creative space, perhaps, but also maybe it's just like, hell, it's Friday at 3. Let's make a decision. Let's make this productive. So I wouldn't really call a meeting at 3:00 on Friday, but
and I think
I also wouldn't call a meeting at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
8 a.m.
Fair point. But I do think, and it goes back to you take your own advice, right? So for the team, they might be all super jazzed about having a Friday at 3:00 and it works for everybody. But don't assume that it does. Or if you're asking people to do that, you better have a very clear, focused meeting. And I think that's, you mentioned earlier about facilitation. And I don't necessarily know if leaders get a lot of training on facilitation.
They don't even get a lot of training on management for much less facilitation. No, they don't. I didn't.
Yeah. And you have to, meetings have to be engaging. I mean, I think we can all sit and think about meetings that were horrible and why, and that those are easy because it's like, oh, I didn't have purpose. I didn't know what I was doing. And well, what made me feel good about a meeting? I came in, there was clear topics. We had enough time for the topics. We made decisions. We tabled issues that weren't relevant and didn't get spun out on topics. I mean, I've sat in meetings, and I'm sure you have, where there's maybe 4 or 5 topics on the agenda, and you think, all right, that's doable. Well, you get into the first topic, and somebody wants to go through their whole, missive of all the problems that they have, and if you, as a leader of that meeting, don't kind of facilitate and say, I hear what you're saying, but that's not really, we'll put it in the parking lot. And I have even heard people at one of the places that I worked had an ELMO, and it was a picture of, ELMO from Sesame Street fame, which stood for enough, let's move on.
I like it.
That people could, raise the flag to be like, okay, we've beat that, topic. Let's get going. So I do think it's critical that leaders invest in themselves and feeling comfortable about being able to facilitate meetings. Because
I think too. Go ahead. I was just saying, like, when you're getting to 2 to 3 topics or where you think you have enough time, I have found that you almost never have enough time, right? So I would always err on the side of less because and I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to make a decision, if you're trying to get everyone's opinion and weigh in, so you're trying to move forward, you need space for that, right? So I think I've been working with a team, and they're like, oh, maybe we need to take some stuff off the agenda and just leave open space, because it just, especially if you want a lively discussion, less is more.
And you don't want to be so tied. You have to allow flexibility, right? What are the most critical things that you get done today? Because if it's making decisions, let's focus this meeting on making a decision, not let's make a
Making one decision.
Right. Not let's make a decision and then do 4 other, where are we going for Christmas, holiday dinner, where are we, keep it focused so that you do have that time. Because then somebody gets the short shift where you say, oh, well, we need the classic. Well, when can we meet again? Can we meet tomorrow? Because we haven't finished. Or the meeting's supposed to end at 1:00 and you're sitting there and it's 1:10, it's 1:15. It's like, and then people just start getting up and leaving.
Well, you have to. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about Zoom. You can just peace out. You're like, oh, sorry, gotta go. Leave. But it could be more awkward on a team. But it is really hard, even as a seasoned facilitator, to stay on track and on time. But it is really saying, hey, we are running over. Can you stay after, or we have to table it? We're not going to get to this. I think it is making those adjustments on the fly, because it is truly the hardest thing to do as a facilitator. And
I think as you create a culture on your team, I think it's imperative that people have the ownership to help along that lines, where they can be supportive and also raise the flag, like, hey, I thought we were here to make the decision on XYZ today, but it seems like we've gone left. Or are we still wanting to make that decision? And if so, can we get back to that? And some people, you get caught up in the moment. So it is good to have somebody in the meeting kind of pull you back.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because I think I want to differentiate between like that. I think there's like a rabbit hole tracker. Like there's someone to pull you back on track. There's also just a timekeeper. I was in a meeting, I was doing a call with a team, and there was someone in there, and they were the timekeeper, and she was like 5 minutes it was wonderful, because we had a talker in there, and it was like, I was like, I have a minute left. Who have I not heard from? Right. Like, so it's having a timekeeper can be the same or separate from someone who's like, hey, I thought we were pulling people back on track. And you can assign your people that, because there's people that are probably naturally good at that, or you can rotate them around. Like, it doesn't have to be the same person. Not everyone wants to be the timekeeper every time. But if that's not your strong suit, assign that to, or ask somebody
who really likes, who is a good taskmaster.
Keep them on track.
Right. Come on. Keep it moving.
Where, we've learned a lot in a lot of meetings that have not gone well. I remember as a leader, I didn't realize this, because I'm annoyingly like, let's think of all the ideas and let's brainstorm and let's just throw this out there, and I catch people off guard. So one of the things that I used to do that is really what I consider a no now is not give people proper warning. So if you're going to want them ideas from people, which is ridiculous because I'm a processor, like I need time, but for some reason I wanted them just to come up with ideas on the fly.
On the spot. And it's pressure.
It's pressure, especially in front of your team, right? So luckily she called me on it, and I didn't love it. Let me be honest, but she was right. Like, so that was one of my mistakes that I made and had to learn, is like, if you are going to ask for feedback, give them preparation time. And if you can't give them preparation time, say, hey, think about this and get back to me later. So that's one of my many mistakes.
Hey, in our next, we didn't get to it today, but in our next meeting, I want to talk about, so please come prepared to, bring 3 ideas related to X topic. Right. And you're like, oh, okay, I can, because not everybody wants to just think out loud. There's a lot of people that are processors that need to sit and kind of take it all in. And then they come back with very intelligent suggestions or recommendations, but they feel put on the spot. Yeah. So, and along those same lines, I would say, we all deal with part of facilitation is making sure that people feel like they have a voice and they participate, right? So, but I would caution people, when you call on people or ask for their input, do it in a way that doesn't put them on the spot. Like, well, Jen, hadn't heard from you all day, then you automatically become not you, but some people may automatically become very defensive, like, well, no, I'm just thinking through it. And now you just called me out versus saying,
yeah.
Hey, Jen, would love to get your thoughts on that versus putting well, I haven't heard from you yet, or you seem awfully occupied with your laptop.
Yeah, you know what? That's gotten me in trainings before. So when I've been doing trainings, some people will be on their phone or they'll be on their computer. And so sometimes I get a little bit in my head, like, what the hell are they doing? It turns out they're looking at a document I sent, or they're looking at and they're not just telling me that. There probably are people tuned out, but there's they were looking at their assessment on the phone. So you can't assume that people are checked out. And if you do think they're checked out, you address it after the meeting. I noticed that. Are you okay?
Hey, the last couple of meetings, your participation seems to have dropped off. Is something going on?
Right.
Well, yeah, before I had a meeting before that one and I got, it went sideways, or this issue came up right before I had to go into the meeting. So all I could think about was that, and I'm, not the subject at hand.
Yeah. So definitely not calling him on it then. What about awkward meetings? So some of the leaders that come to me, that it's a little bit of like this pain point. Yeah. They'll put something out there, they'll get crickets, or they'll be like, oh, this is awkward. Or there's just like this underlying tension. Have you ever experienced that? Or have you, done any troubleshooting in that area?
I think the biggest thing that you can do when you're in those situations, it's okay to, have awareness of, I've led a meeting and I've come out and I'm like, that really didn't go how I thought it should go. And use that opportunity to, reach out to people that were in the meeting and say, hey, and don't lead the witness. Start with, hey, how do you think that meeting went? Not, well, that was a show. Can you believe da 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 da? Just leave it as, hey, how did you think that meeting went? And they'll let you, oh my God, I can't believe so-and-so, you really needed to cut so-and-so off, or, we had way too many topics to get. People will come to the table if you give them the opportunity. And again, I would do that individually.
Yes.
Yeah. To try and get that feedback and to do it on a kind of regular basis. It's good to ask for feedback of, hey, are we doing it? Are we meeting too much? That's always a great one to ask. Like, hey, don't need you.
Yeah, but then you'll get the people who, I love meeting all the time. No, I don't want to meet all the time. I think it's an important question to ask, but it is really hard. I think that's one thing to think about. Like, it's hard to please everyone. So just
absolutely
do what you can. But yeah, if you're hearing that, and a lot of people are like, more than one person's like, yes, a little bit too much, pay attention to it. I even like the idea of after a meeting, giving them that little smiley face, the meh face, and the, oh God, the no, oh no face, just getting them to rate it. Like, how would you rate this meeting? What made you choose that answer? So that continual improvement, because again, if you're taking people away from their work and you are, spending the money and gathering everyone, you want to make it effective for everyone.
And sometimes it's simple changes, right? So it goes back to, somebody that's having a team meeting at, 8:30 and somebody's always late. One person always tends to be late. And then, and so then the team gets like, well, so-and-so is going to be late. And then you have to spend 5 minutes catching the person up, blah, blah, blah. By simply figuring out, okay, this person really, if we move the meeting back, where Mondays are a bad day, let's do it Tuesdays. That was a simple fix. Because it worked better for everybody's schedule. But you can't just see, you as a leader, it's not all about what works best for me. It's what works best for your team. I'm an early morning person. I used to have, I could love a 7:30 meeting.
Oh,
I
Karen.
would not do it. No. But I also
I'm
had
sure there
I
were
had
people
people
who
on my
did.
team that were early birds too. And those people, yes, I would have a one-on-one with them, but that was a mutual agreement.
Right.
That wasn't me saying, I'm here at 7:30, you need to get here at 7:30 and be ready to talk. This was, oh, you're an early person too. Do you want to go ahead and meet before you? Oh yeah, that would be great.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. But I like what you said about, because in my mind, when you're saying that person is late, I'm like, oh my God, they're late. You need to talk to that person. but it is talking to them to say, like, what's going on? Because
Right.
if you have kids, like my kids, their school starts at 9:00. What am I going to do? I can't be anywhere. Like I can be there before a meeting and maybe before school drop off or after. But yeah, if it works better and it's not a big deal for you, just change the meeting.
And I also want to mention there's also leader accountability. So if you as a leader are scheduling that meeting, don't leave your team hanging.
Oh my, no,
Don't.
leader being late.
Yes. I had a leader that consistently would run 15 minutes at least behind.
No. Is it like in like college where you get up after 15 minutes?
Well,
And
you're sitting there going, it comes across, it makes you feel like my time is not as important as theirs. And everybody is in the workplace because there's a job that needs to be done and everybody's critical in helping the company function. So nobody's time is more important than the other. So if you are a leader and you call a meeting and you get pulled somewhere, or please communicate to your team. Hey, sorry, I'll be there in, 10 minutes, or I'm sorry, I will, and I would also say, try and protect that time. You don't want to work for someone that 9 times out of 10, your team meeting gets rescheduled because something came up. It's like, well, you're managing up. What about us?
Yeah, I used to have a leader who would sit outside and talk to another VP as I was waiting in their room for my one-on-one. And it was the most, I thought, disrespectful thing because it happened on a repeated basis. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm sorry. She showed up when she showed up. And it was infuriating to me.
Yeah.
But I digress. Now, I do want to, there's 2 more things I want to talk about. One is, I like a solid close to where what's next steps are, who is accountable, what decisions were made, what's next, because you don't want it to be Groundhog's Day where like, what did we talk about? Or like the things that you talked about or the decisions you made are lost. So what do you think about the ending of a meeting?
Oh, I'm big on articulating, what are the action items at the end of the meeting, all right, this is what we decided today. This is these are our next steps. Or Jen, you're going to follow up with XYZ by Tuesday, and putting, and that's where my kind of background as a project manager, of letting things, holding people accountable. But then I would also say, while it's important to close in the meeting, it's also important to document it. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer in, and I know some people say, well, it's a pain in the butt. I don't have time to do, meeting notes. And I'm not saying this is not transcription. We don't need the court reporters word for word.
High level.
We talk about this, blah, 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 blah. And here are the next steps. Here are the things that are due and by when. And then you send it out. And I always would put in mind, let me know if I've missed or misstated something. Because you want to make sure, well, I thought I heard this, that they're going to get it done, by Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Well, no, they heard it's really in 2 Wednesdays from now.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that with every team that I meet with. I will send that follow up. Here's what we talked about, decisions made. Here's what I expect, right? Next steps. Like, here's what, when next time we meet, I'm a big fan of that.
And again, it's not word for word. It's not verbatim. It's the highlights and the key items.
Because you won't remember a damn thing. Like, sometimes if you go a while between meetings, let's just say it's a month later, and you're gonna be like, what did we talk about? I mean, like, I don't remember what I had for dinner 2 nights ago. How am I supposed to remember a meeting that we had a month ago? So to have that is super helpful. Just making sure that I'm more of a consultant, so I will do the notes, right? But if you're in a team, not always assigning that one person, right? You're the note taker.
Yeah,
you want to be
don't
give
it to the junior, so-called junior person on the team, and that's don't haze new people. That and especially there's so many tools now. You can do it within Microsoft or what, and do your notes as you're going through. But I would also, if you're doing that, make it clear
what you're doing
to your team that hey, I'm participating, but I'm doing the notes today, or so and so is doing the notes, so that's why they're clickety clacking on the keyboard.
Yes. All right. So one thing that I feel like gets missed a lot, and it gets misconstrued, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but are connection activities. So I think a lot of people groan because they're like, oh God, I don't want to do something that feels uncomfortable, that feels unsafe, that feels super cheesy, and that you have to expose your innermost secrets. And that's not what I'm talking about. But I am a super big fan of a quick 5-minute icebreaker for teams. And I know you are too.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Question of the day, QOTD.
Say more.
We would start, it's been a practice of mine for a long time, either on project teams or direct teams, or of at the first topic, first agenda item really is the welcome. This is what we're going to do today, but let's do the question of the day. And to your point of making sure everybody's an active participant, it rotated. So I would kick it off the first week or ask somebody to do it. And they knew before the meeting, hey, I'm up next. And there was just a rotation. And so you had the wildest, variation in topics like, hey, if what was the first car you had as a kid, the first car that you drove? Versus if you had a superpower, what would that be? Or what's the one thing you can't live without on Thanksgiving? Just easy kind of,
Yeah.
We're not getting into world hunger, do you have any tattoos? People would ask that. Or if you were to get a tattoo, what would you get it of? And so you get a sense of who they are as an individual, and the commonalities that we all have. And it grounded the meeting in the fact that we're all people. We've all gone to meetings where it's just like, hit the gas, blah, 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 blah. You're either being, told what to do, when to do it, how quick to do it, how fast do they need it. This grounded it in the fact that, okay, we're all here as humans, and we're learning a lot about people. And we would even as people, new people came onto our teams, my teams, we would do their first or second meeting, do kind of a blitz, like a top 10 of prior questions that had been asked to help them get, acclimated to the team and help us learn a little bit about them. But again, very low pressure.
Yeah, I was just facilitating a meeting with a leadership team, and we started talking because before the main leader came in, and we were just talking about these mint cookies, the Girl Scout cookies.
Yes.
Wendy's has a Frosty or what the hell are they called? Thin Mints.
Yeah.
And we just talk about that, and then he comes in, joins in the conversation, and he's like, well, let's go around the room. What's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Yeah.
And it was just fun. It was like a fun,
Samoas.
some Thin Mints. Sorry. Yeah. It was usually
I like a
Samoas or
Thin Mint
Thin
in my
Mints.
freezer, but I like a Samoa.
So we did that. It was a fun
Yeah.
conversation. So they don't have to be exhausting. They can just be a fun little connection activity. But like you said,
Yeah.
it's like, don't just get in and say, oh, we're just trying to get the best out of people and get all their, you got to kind of get to know everyone, loosen them up. It builds trust as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I think in where I have found it tremendously beneficial as a leader is helping me to understand my teams better and how people want to be treated and what people's interests are and what people, likes are. I know one year I had like the October date and I knew the holidays were coming up and I was like, so if anybody had to give you a gift card, where would it be? What would be the greatest gift card that you could get? And I had people say REI. I had people say Target. I heard people Amazon, whatever. Well, I took note of all that. And then I gave them holiday presents and it was tailored to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would have thought, people really appreciated that. Oh my gosh, you didn't just go to Costco and get the 5-pack of, prime steaks or whatever and give them out to everybody, that it was personal and you heard me. So that's another benefit to taking the time, especially when you're talking about your individual team meetings.
Yeah, I love that. And it takes 3 minutes? I mean,
Yeah,
even if you have a large team,
we're not looking for people's life story. It's like, if the question is, what's your favorite color? It's blue and move on to the next person.
Right. We don't need the story of why blue is your favorite color. Yes.
Right. Is it Duke blue? Is it Carolina blue? Is it sky blue?
That is the topic of conversation in the Carolinas. So,
yeah,
just
saying.
True. All right. So I'd be remiss if I did not mention that I created a toolkit for exactly this.
Yes.
So I have been in meetings. I facilitate meetings. I've led poor meetings, let me be honest. And I created.
We all? If you're lying if you haven't said. I mean, we've all been there. We've all had bad meetings. We've walked out and go, oh, that was bad. But how do you get better?
Yeah,
and
I just didn't want teams to suffer.
Reminder of how to do that.
Thank you for that. It's hard to think of all these connection activities. It's hard to think about like, what do you need to put in the agenda and all that. So I'll link that up, but I think that can help people. I should have stole some of your connection activity items in there. There's a few in there to get started, but they've got the one that you just said now. All right, Karen, there you go. What did we miss? What did we not talk about that you can wrap up?
We didn't talk about that I feel very passionate about. Is leaders delegating responsibility for the meeting to their team members. And by that, I mean, hey, we're going to meet monthly and we're going to rotate monthly and you're responsible for planning the agenda. Well, if I need to have a meeting related to what I'm doing, I will have that meeting. And I think some leaders view it as as a growth opportunity. And if that's the case, then I would suggest you as a leader sitting down with that individual to help craft the agenda together, because it's still, you own that team.
Wait. So you're saying that you do not think leaders should delegate that responsibility to their team?
No.
Okay.
And that might be controversial, but it goes back to what's the purpose?
Right.
If it's rotating every month, is there not consistent? Karen's needs are this, and then Jen rolls in next month and it's totally off versus saying, and I get it. You can say, does anybody have agenda topics? But by saying you are responsible for determining the agenda for this weekly, monthly meeting, I'm like, well, you're the leader. What do you need us to be focused on?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
So,
can delegate those other things we were talking about, meeting
yeah.
notes,
Mhm.
timekeeping, rabbit hole tracker.
Yeah. And
Okay.
have them, we're having people facilitate a particular topic, item on there of like, hey, you really know a lot about this new tool you seem to have,
Mhm.
caught on. I would really like you to do, 15 minutes overview on what are the top 3 things you've learned
Yeah.
that will benefit the rest of the team. That's a great way to help develop somebody. But just blanketly saying, I don't have time to do the agenda, well, then we don't need to meet.
Yeah.
So
Definitely not. Well, I can't believe we talked 40 minutes about meetings, but we could probably talk longer, but we'll spare
hopefully it
everyone.
was an efficient use of 40 minutes time. If not, we're open to feedback.
Yes, put it in the comments.
Yeah.
But Karen, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I think you've given some tips that people can take and use right away.